This is your News Source Evening Bulletin for today, Wednesday, the first day of June in the year 2022. I'm Gordon Mosley, and here's what we're tracking tonight. The mining industry is getting another shot in the arm of relief efforts. The Vice President, Baba Jagdeo, announced the removal of several taxes from the mining sector, totaling $1.9 billion, which the government hopes will cushion the rising cost of operations in the mining industry. During a meeting with miners from the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, along with large and small-scale miners, Vice President Jagdeo said the move by the government is in keeping with its efforts to keep the industry alive. Among the relief measures is a reduction to the final tax applied to miners' income, the complete withdrawal of the current 10% tributary tax, and the 14% value-added tax charged on lubricants for their machines.
So very mindful of what we promise, and given that if you look across the board, we're trying to fulfill all of these, even in the second year in government. I spoke with the president, and he has agreed that we will now reduce the final, practically complete what we had promised status quo ante. That is what we had promised, status quo ante.
According to Mr. Jagdeo, although the PPCV government never promised to reduce the tributaries tax, it has taken note of the disadvantage and the difficulties the sector faces with the tax in place, and the decision was made to remove it altogether.
So that is going to result in probably a loss of about $300 million in taxes also. And the third issue is this is something across the board for all industries, not peculiar to mining, that we want to do is because the gasoline and diesel, we remove all the taxes. So we heard recently that lube oil has a tax. So we're going to remove the 14% VAT on lube oil for the industry. But this will have across the board impact for all industries because anyone who uses lubricating oil would have that impact. So this is a combined package of maybe $1.9 billion that the industry will see return to it. That is what we wanted to do so that we can support the industry.
In addition to the package, an additional $2.4 billion will be spent on upgrading the roads in the mining areas. More news coming up in just a moment.
How fast is fiber? Think fast. GTT Fiber has 3 packages with download speeds of 50, 100, and 150 megabits per second. That's fast enough to stream movies and music, to chat with Gran and Fran, to study, and more. What would you do? Upgrade to GTT Fiber today and don't get left behind tomorrow.
Doors and windows, Republic. Rooms and more, Republic. A brand new rug on the floor. Come to Republic, come to Republic. Whatever you need, you got it. Come through and get your mortgage. Live the dream with Republic.
95 to 100% financing, 50% waiver of negotiation fees, plus one lucky person gets their mortgage paid in full. Turn some day into today. Talk to Republic Bank about your low-cost mortgage today.
Win a full gaming setup, Xbox X, gaming chair, gaming speaker and headset, or any of over 60 weekly prizes like Oculus Quest 2, Mini 2 drone, Nintendo Switch, and many more top gaming prizes. Check below for details.
Let's tell you now that the opposition APNU-AFC has proposed a number of measures that it wants the government to take on board to assist citizens with the rising cost of living. Opposition leader Aubrey Norton said the government should examine a number of short-term proposals, including salary increases, additional tax cuts, and more assistance for senior citizens, children, and the disadvantaged. Mr. Norton said there should also be provisions for small-scale farmers and subsidized electricity rates for low-income households. He said too many citizens are still feeling the full effects of the rise in the cost of living, and the government cannot ignore their plight.
Guyanese deserve better. With oil wealth, we have increased our financial capacity to deliver the life people have expected for decades. With the right government and governance, Guyana can be transformed. At the moment, Guyanese see no salvation in the PPP's allocation of a mere Guyana $5 billion, less than 1% of the 2022 budget for cost of living relief to our people. Poor planning and wasteful spending. Much of that money has already been embezzled and has bypassed many who are eligible.
The government has announced a number of measures that it hopes will cushion the effects of the rising cost of living. Farmers, fisherfolk, and miners have all been targeted for various relief measures. The opposition leader contends that the relief drive must be more widespread and cater to more citizens.
But as inflation and cost of living have soared, so too have inequality and poverty. Not only has the buying power of the dollar diminished, but the stagnant wages in both the private and public sectors have further exacerbated living standards. In less than 2 years, the PPP government has pushed more and more Guyanese below the poverty line. Sporadic one-off cash grants and low-paying temporary jobs will not change this reality. This is mere band-aid and political pandering. These measures cannot result in a better quality of life for the people of Guyana.
For its part, the government has said it will continue to examine various initiatives to assist citizens with the cost of living woes that are being experienced in several countries. Let's tell you now that the local private sector commission has slammed the CARICOM private sector organization for what the PSC sees as gross disrespect, after representatives from the regional body visited Guyana and did not meet with the private sector commission or any other local private sector organization. A mission from the CARICOM private sector organization recently visited Guyana and met with President Irfanali and discussed a number of issues concerning non-tariff barriers and other matters related to the advancement of CARICOM. The PSC in a statement last evening said, while the meeting with the government is welcomed, it has taken serious offense that its CARICOM counterpart has treated the local private sector organizations with contempt. Following the passage of Guyana's local content legislation earlier this year, the local private sector lashed out at the regional body after a leaked document showed concerns being raised by the regional body about Guyana's local content legislation. The PSC had said then and has reiterated that the position was ill-informed, since the body, although it could have made submissions on the legislation, refused to do so and became vocal after the legislation was passed. But even as the private sector commission took offense to not being invited to meet with the regional body during the recent visit, it is saying that the CARICOM private sector body is not a true reflection of businesses within the community. The Guyana Private Sector Commission now wants CARICOM to re-evaluate the CARICOM private sector organization, its membership composition, institutional structure, and whether in the current dispensation it is genuinely seeking to achieve its mandate. The Private Sector Commission said it is looking to work together with the CPSO, but it must first get its house in order. CARICOM has largely been ignoring the various positions of the Guyana Private Sector Commission. Having raised over $13 million through a recent fundraiser, the Office of the First Lady, Arya Ali, today announced that the money will be used to commence the establishment of a business center for persons with disabilities. The First Lady believes that persons with disabilities must be provided with the resources, the opportunities, knowledge, and skills needed to increase their capacity to determine their own future and fully participate in community life. She was quoted in the release as stating that the ability of persons with disabilities to earn a living for themselves rather than to depend on others for a living is a cornerstone for their economic empowerment. Experience, she said, suggests that the majority of persons with disabilities are unemployed and often denied employment opportunities even when they have met necessary requirements. The government has committed to constructing the facility, which will be located in Region 6, while the Office of the First Lady will be responsible for furnishing the center, providing startup capital, and implementing the program. The Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, believes that persons who are addicted to marijuana should be placed in rehabilitation programs instead of jail cells. The government has been considering the calls for the decriminalization of marijuana possession in small amounts. While there have been several calls for that to be done, many persons believe it could lead to widespread use and more addictions.
In terms of marijuana, I think you have to look at that in medical legal terms. So part of it, in terms of allowing small quantities of it, has to do with the legal aspects, because people who have or who have been using marijuana and they have an addiction shouldn't be in the lockups to small quantity. They should be on a program to help them with rehabilitation, and I think that should be the focus.
Minister Anthony further explained that the benefits of rehabilitation will be greater than any benefit that could be derived from jail time.
Because going into prison for small quantities might lead them to do other things and to get into more deviant behavior, rather than if you put them on into a program where they can go through rehab.
And the health minister said smoking remains dangerous to a person's health, and his ministry will continue its efforts to encourage people to turn away from smoking.
I think the two things are different. But in terms of cigarette smoking, there have been lots of studies that have been done from the 60s, coming all the way to present time, that shows a lot of the dangers of cigarette smoking, which includes the cancers, the cardiovascular effects of smoking, peptic ulcers, chronic lung disease, a whole host of things. So we know that the dangers of this, and that's why we have to work to reduce this.
Guyana joined the rest of the world yesterday in observing World No Tobacco Day. There are several laws in Guyana to discourage smoking in public places, but very few are enforced. As the number of new and active COVID-19 cases continues to rise in Guyana after a long period of decline, the Ministry of Health today announced 3 additional deaths. A 3-month-old baby girl from Region 4 who passed away on Tuesday has been listed among the 3 deaths. The other 2 COVID-19 victims have been identified as a 41-year-old man and a 71-year-old woman. The total number of COVID-19 deaths recorded during the month of May now stands at 9. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health also reported today that 206 new cases of the virus have been detected in the country. Those 206 new cases came from a total of 2,718 tests that were conducted within a 24-hour period. Health officials continue to encourage persons to wear face masks, although it is no longer mandatory. Persons are also being encouraged to get vaccinated if they have not been vaccinated already, and those who have been fully vaccinated are being encouraged to return to the health ministry for a booster shot. 10 days after an Enmore man was struck down by a speeding car, he remains missing, and family members are tonight seeking answers. On the 23rd of May, 50-year-old Reynolds Williams was hit down by a red motor car bearing registration number PAB 2552. He was hit down along the Enmore Public Road on the east coast of the Demerara. The accident was witnessed by a friend of the man and other persons who reported that after the accident, the driver of the car and another person picked up the injured man to take him to the hospital in the same car that was involved in the crash. Since then, family members have been searching the various hospitals and even the funeral homes and morgues, but cannot find any trace of Williams' body. They now fear that he may have succumbed and his body dumped by the driver of the car that hit him down. Police investigators were able to track down the owner of the car, but he is claiming that he was not the one driving at the time, but it was someone else who had no permission to move the car. With the accident victims still missing, the family members say they now need answers. One of the missing man's sisters, Sylvie Williams, said the police investigators appear to be dragging their feet with the probe.
You know, it seems to me like that now is a crime. To my mind, it is a crime. But the police is dragging their feet on it.
The sister is pleading for the driver of the car to come forward and provide information and answers that could bring some closure for the family.
I want justice for my brother. If the grandmother of that person is listening to the news, I want her to understand that I want them to know that, okay, I'm traumatized. I want to know where my brother's body is, and I want them to put themselves into my place. If it was their family, they would have felt the same way. So I want them to understand what I'm feeling and let them come forward and say who is their nephew or who was their grandson, because they will always live with guilt. It would not come off from their mind. The person who touched my body, my brother's body, would live with guilt, and it would bother him.
The family is also calling for the Guyana Police Force to step up its investigation of the crime. A Plaisance resident will spend the next 10 months in jail after he pleaded guilty to assaulting a police officer. The assailant, Sion Prince, was in police custody under investigation for another crime when he punched a police sergeant in the face, resulting in the sergeant falling and hitting his head against the roadway. The incident took place in Plaisance, and Prince was immediately arrested by other police ranks. In court today, the accused entered a guilty plea to the assault charge and was immediately sentenced to 10 months in jail. He remains under investigation in relation to the other matter.
Farfan & Mendes is committed to promoting development through quality, service, and integrity. Customers are guaranteed genuine products, reliability, and excellence in service. Their corporate head office at Providence affords you the added convenience of a spacious showroom with secured parking. Farfan & Mendes continues to offer their valued customers a wide range of genuine and affordable German-engineered equipment. They're leading the way in clean, green alternative energy solutions with industry-leading brands of solar equipment. So visit their showroom at Providence and enjoy efficient and courteous service. Farfan & Mendes, offering you solutions you can depend on.
Doors and windows, Republic. Rooms and more, Republic. A brand new rug on the floor. Come to Republic, come to Republic. Whatever you need, you got it. Come through and get your mortgage. Live the dream with Republic.
95 to 100% financing, 50% waiver of negotiation fees, plus one lucky person gets their mortgage paid in full. Turn some day into today. Talk to Republic Bank about your low-cost mortgage today.
Have you heard the news?
The CPL is back.
Done! Yes!
The finals coming to Guyana.
Absolutely brilliant.
It's going to be a carnival of cricket.
It's going to be a carnival of cricket.
It's going to be a carnival of cricket.
See you there.
Win a full gaming setup, Xbox X, gaming chair, gaming speaker and headset, or any of over 60 weekly prizes like Oculus Quest 2, Mini 2 drone, Nintendo Switch, and many more top gaming prizes. Check below for details.
Fuel it up and drive, Super 95. Tune up, fuel it up and drive, Super 95. Tune up. Protect your fuel system, boy. High mileage and performance, boy.
Guy Oil
Super 95 gasoline gives you more reasons to drive and is available at 56 service stations nationwide. For affordable price, high performance, and high mileage, choose Guyana's Super 95 gasoline.
Fuel it up and drive.
Across the region tonight, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, is urging his fellow CARICOM leaders not to attend the Summit of the Americas, which will be held in the U.S. this month. CARICOM leaders are still undecided as to whether they will boycott the summit if Washington goes ahead with its plans not to invite the leaders of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua to the event. In addition, the regional leaders had also expressed their opposition to Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido leading a Venezuelan delegation to the event. CARICOM chairman and Belize Prime Minister John Bassano had confirmed that Washington is lobbying for CARICOM to change its position and not boycott the summit that the U.S. said is expected to focus on building a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for the hemisphere. In a letter to regional leaders seen by the Caribbean Media Corporation, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister wrote that he is very aware that CARICOM government's good relations with the U.S. are of paramount importance. He noted, however, that their relations are too close and the self-interest too tightly interconnected for there to be any lasting rupture, certainly more than a temporary dissidence. He also warned that CARICOM is in danger of finding itself in an uneasy position given the public declarations of several Latin American governments of their non-attendance to the summit, whether at the presidential level or at all. 11 people are dead and more than 20 missing after Hurricane Agatha struck the state of Oaxaca in Mexico. Agatha made landfall on Monday as a Category 2 hurricane, the strongest to hit Mexico's Pacific coast in the month of May since records began in 1949. Heavy rain brought by Agatha triggered landslides and flash flooding. Most of the victims were swept away by rivers or buried in mudslides. Agatha arrived on Mexico's coast near Puerto Angel with wind gusts of up to 169 kilometers per hour. However, torrential rains caused rivers to overflow and mountain slides to give way. Villages in the mountains are among those that were hit the worst. And finally tonight, international news. Russia has accused the U.S. of seeking to prolong the war in Ukraine after U.S. President Joe Biden said he would supply the Ukraine with new long-range missiles. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the U.S. was intentionally adding fuel to the fire with the deliveries. Separately, the German government has promised to send an air defense system to Ukraine. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov hit out against the deliveries and said Mr. Biden's announcement increased the risk of a third country being dragged into the conflict. The long-range missiles are to help Ukrainian troops strike enemy forces more precisely from a longer distance. The U.S. had previously been unwilling to provide the weapons out of fear that they could be used against targets in Russia. But the U.S. says Ukraine has given assurances that this will not happen. And that's your News Source Evening Bulletin for tonight. I'm Gordon Mosley reporting and encouraging you to stay safe.